All right, everyone, welcome to Shabbos, Thursday night class. This is the fifth class in the understanding of the Shabbos meals. And with that, we're learning these cosmic, amazing ideas. And we are holding over here in the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe, page 590. And we're holding by the words, V'tachazi and come see. This is a commentary on the Zohar. There is the Zohar that explains the meals of Shabbos, and we were learning about the Alter Rebbe's commentary. And in the last class, we were learning how Shabbos is a time when God says, it's Oisi Beinu Benechem, it's only between me and you, because the Shabbos lights, the Shabbos pleasure, as we discussed in earlier classes, is coming through and being invited in through the attribute of Chachma. And in Chachma, only the souls of Israel are plugged into that level of Chachma. Chachma is considered ayin, nothingness, where there is no mitzius, there's no self. Bina, which is where the Yom Tov, the holidays are taking, the main energy, the main expansion of divine accessibility and divine light that shines on the holidays is from Bina. And Bina is already the beginning of somethingness, the beginning of Yash. And that's what enables the emotions. And in the emotions, we learned there is already a leakage to the dark side. That's why from Abraham comes Yishmael, and from Isaac, from Yitzchak, comes Esau. But from the level of Chachma, there cannot be any leakage to anywhere unholy. And that's the uniqueness of Shabbos. And that's the reason he explained that we learned in last week's class. The Zohar says that even though on the holidays we offer certain sacrifices, which they enable everybody to get a little piece of the pie, the nations have some kind of a connection to it. But on Shabbos, we don't offer sacrifices representing the nations at all, because Shabbos is above the entire reach. The level of God, where God reveals himself on Shabbos, is inaccessible only to Beini u'Beinechem, between me and you, God says. Oisil B'nei Yisrael, assigned to the Jewish people. This is what we learned last week. You remember? Okay. Now we continue when we say like this. The Zohar says, V'tachazi and come and see. V'kule shar zimnin, and all the rest of the times, v'chagin, and all the rest of the holidays, boy benash lechadi, a person needs to be rejoiceful, u'lemechta lemiskena, and they need to have guests. They need to bring joy to the less fortunate, to the poor people. And if a person rejoices himself, and they don't bring the joy also they don't have guests at their table, to the poor, they have a great punishment. Because if it says in the verse, this is a verse in Malachi, Perek Beis, Pasuk Gimel, V'zeresi, I think it means I will throw upon them. Oh, no, I'm sorry. V'zeresi, I will scatter. Peres means the waste. I will throw the waste. Al penechem, on their faces. Peres chagechem, the waste of your holidays. Like Hashem is saying, I will take the garbage and I will dump it on your faces. But it only mentions the waste of the holidays. It doesn't say Peres. So the uyu b'Shabbati chadi. But on Shabbos, we say that if a person is happy on Shabbos, which means he participates in the Shabbos meals, even though he doesn't give to others, is not punished like the other times and holidays. Not that one is exempt completely. There could be some complaint to the person. You should always have guests at your table. But on the Shabbos, it's not punishable to the same degree like it is on the holidays. This is all the comment of the Zohar. Because if you see in the words, it says Peres chagechem, the waste of your holidays, but not your waste of your Shabbos. the waste of your holidays, peres chagechem kama v'loy peres shabbatchem, but not the waste of your Shabbos. And it says, God says your festivities of Rosh Chodesh, your new months, and Moadechem and your special times, which means the holidays, Sana Nafshi, God says, I despise it. Referring to when the Jewish people are not serving God and they're not taking care of their poor, God says, don't give me your holidays. I hate. But it doesn't say Shabbos. It doesn't say God says, I hate your Shabbos. So you see that on Shabbos, one of the reasons you need to give to the poor is to sweeten the judgments. The judgments can come from Yom Tov. There could be some level of judgments in the world from the holidays. Shabbos is above being a source for any kind of judgments. There's no judgment on Shabbos at all. And therefore, it's not needed so much to have, for the spiritual dynamics, to allow for the Shabbos to be a blessing. It doesn't require so much a guest. Although it's always good to have guests. It's always good to do the mitzvah. But it doesn't require it for the essential energies of Shabbos to flow. But on the holidays, if you're participating in the festivities of the holidays and not inviting guests, that itself can cause a mess, a spiritual mess. And that's why it says, Beini ubein b'nei Yisrael. Between me, God says, and the children of Israel, Atkan. So to understand the root of this discourse, of this statement of the Zohar, so let's first explore the root of the miskini. Who is the miskini? Miskini means, the Zohar means the less fortunate, the poor people. What is the root of poverty? And what does it mean to bring joy to the poor? For behold, a poor person who's living life with meager means is a sign that for whatever reason, he or she is hooked up to a channel where there is a very, very weak internet power. Like it's not uploaded. The speed is very weak. The download speed, the upload speed, the situation. I'm laughing because we were suffering over here. The reason the class started late is because we're finding that the speed that we needed for the internet wasn't working well. So I was having a hard time getting. I hope it's coming through okay now. So I'm using that as an example for the spiritual dynamics over here. A poor person is not getting a good signal. He's not getting a good Wi-Fi. His or her channel to God has been his energy flow to his or her soul is coming through a very weak connection, and that's because they are receiving from a more constricted channel. A constricted channel means din, judgment. There's a lot of judgment there. There's a lot of constriction. Now, where does this come from? All energy and all influence to the world comes from Malchus, comes from all the 10 sefirot, but who's the actual final responsible sefira attribute through which all benevolence and kindness and goodness and life comes to the world? Through the Shekhinah, through Malchus. But we know that Malchus is the provider because God runs the world by being a king over the world. So that's what we mean, Malchus. It's from the king's table that everybody's fed. But we know that in the attribute of Malchus, there are judgments. A king is very kind and very benevolent, but sometimes a king can be very tough also. There are dinim in Malchus. We know that in Malchus, we always have to sweeten the judgments because there are, God forbid, the world is not behaving properly and there's a lack of satisfaction coming above. The level of Malchus can get a little up and tight, can get a little upset. And a lot of our work has to do with massaging these tight muscles in Malchus. For whatever reason, sometimes it's because of a person's own actions. Sometimes it has nothing to do with their actions in this life. It could be from a Gilgul, from an earlier incarnation. Sometimes it has to do with reasons beyond this person's soul. But for whatever reason, luck has it that this individual is plugged in to where there's a lot of judgments. That's a poor person. They suffer or they have a lack. They're lacking, which means there isn't abundance flowing through their pipeline. It's very minuscule. Okay. Because Malchus, in Malchus there's a lot of judgments, as the Talmud says that the laws of the government is considered a law by Torah, and we have to listen to it. That's a simple meaning. And if you let's say we're living not under a Jewish country, we're living in a today in America, whatever it is. According to Torah, it is every Jew is obliged to follow the laws of the land. Of course, you're obliged to follow the laws of the land, because if you don't follow the laws, you'll end up with a fine and you'll end up in prison from the American government. But the question is, how about by Torah law? Does Torah law obligate you to follow the laws of the land? Well, when those laws are not directly infringing on one's religious duties, that means if the United States decides to make a rule that you're not allowed to make a circumcision, like they're trying to do in Belgium and places like that, then we don't have to listen according to Torah, we don't have to listen to the United States, to the law of California or the law of the government. If the law decides that we're not allowed to keep Shabbat, Jews are not allowed to keep Shabbat and they have to go work on Shabbat, we have no obligation to listen to the law. Right? The Torah does not oblige us to listen. But when there is traffic law, that by a red light you have to stop, and when there is a law that you're supposed to pay your taxes, and when there is a law that these laws which are not conflicting with the religious duties of a Jew, we are obligated to listen to the laws of the country that we are citizens of, according to the Torah. That's the phrase Dina de Malchusa Dina. The laws of the land is considered a law by Torah. Torah sanctions it as an obligation. However, there's a deeper meaning, a more mystical meaning. Malchusa doesn't only mean the government down here. It means the divine governing power. Hashem is the attribute of kingship, which is called Malchut. And we're saying Dina de Malchusa Dina, the judgments of Malchus. What is that implying? That in Malchut, in the attribute of kingship, there are judgments. Now, Kamasha Kosov, like it also says, Hashoifet kala aretz chulu. That's a phrase that Abraham says to God. Is the ruler of the land, is the judge of the land not going to do judgment? Abraham was using that to sweeten the judgments. God was being very angry and was going to punish very harshly the Sodom and Gomorrah, those 5 cities. They were very corrupt. And Abraham was feeling that if there are righteous people over there and God is punishing everybody, there's a lack of judgment. So he was trying to say, be less harsh. But still, the words he's using, the judge of the land will not use judgment. There he meant will not judge fairly, will just get angry and take a general swipe without differentiating between who is guilty and who's not. But in the general term, this phrase is meaning that the attribute of kingship extends and interacts with the world through a certain measure of judgment. Sadly, the poor man ended up in that particular element of God's, because there's a lot more to the divine than that aspect of judgment. And if we are seeking to be under the divine thing, under God's providence, we want to try to position ourselves not to be under God's strict judging element. But the poor person finds themselves in that place. And upon this poor man, it was decreed the punishment of poverty. This poverty. Where is it coming? It's coming from the attribute of judgment that there is in Malchut. In Malchut, the Gevura and the Din is quite prominent. more than in the sefirot that are higher than Malchut. For example, in the Ze'er Anpin, in the 6 emotions, it's predominantly kindness. That's the powerful energy of the higher sphere. In Malchus has a lot of judgments to it. For who anikrit tzedek, Malchus is also referred to in the Zohar as tzedek, as it says tzedek iya malchusa kadisha, that the holy Malchut is called tzedek. And what does tzedek mean? Righteousness. And the Zohar says the Ihudin, that's judgment. In other words, he's working by the letter of the law, judging by just like a king of flesh and blood, a human king, is giving an abundance of goodness and kindness to the one that is worthy for it, based on the based on their correct measure. So that's on one hand. He's very kind and benevolent to those who he feels should get that kindness. But the king can immediately turn around and be very harsh and very, very judgmental against those that he feels he has to rule over them with an iron fist. So too he will decree judgment and punishment. Withholding goodness and kindness to the one he deems is not fitting. With the president now, you can see that all the time. He gets upset at a state. He gets upset at a thing. They're not doing his thing. He says, federal money is not going to there until they stop. He has that. You can see it in him. You can see it in, he whatever. Because he's so raw and he's so, what's in the inside is shown on the outside by this president. You can see these, what a lot of times we speak about a king. He's got this, these brash, intense things are very, very highlighted. But it's at least we can use it for the marshal that it gives. In kingship, there is kindness, and kingship also has harshness. And if the king is upset, then there's withholding, and it can be worse than that, and so on and so on. This will be understood by the supernal kingship. Sha'ani, that the poor man, the root from where the poor man derives his life force, is coming from the judgment and the punishment that is coming to him or to her, from the element of kingship of the world of Atzilus. Atzilus is the world of emanation, which is where the divine attributes primarily preside. Shenikrit Tzedek, which is called Tzedek, as we said earlier, that has judgment in it. Now, where do the judge? Now, let's trace this back. Even though Malchus, in the attribute of Malchut, has a lot of judgments brewing in it, doesn't mean it's only judgment. There's a lot of kindness in Malchus as well, as we said before. A king probably, if the person is a nice king and a decent king, he probably exerts more kindness than he does judgment. But there has to be an element of judgment there as well for kingship. But those judgments do not start in Malchus. Let's trace them where they start. They start in Sefirot that are higher than Malchus. The 6 emotions, although we said they are primarily kindness, but there is Gevura there as well. How do you know? There's even a full one of the 6 is literally Gevura. One of the 6 emotions is Chesed, Gevura. So there is Gevura, which Gevura is judgment, is Midas Adin, the attribute of judgment. So you see that even above the attribute of Malchus, there is Gevura. Where does the Gevura of Ze'er Anpin come from, of the 6 emotions come from? They come from Bina. Bina is the source of Midas Adin. Higher than Bina, there is no constrictions. In Chachma, there is just pure chesed, pure kindness. Bina, on the attribute of understanding, is where the slight nuances of judgments begin. We're now going to see in a moment. Bina itself is still full of love and full of light, but there is already a beginning. There's already a seed, if we might say, for judgments. The roots of judgments that there are in Malchus, nimshach mal maila, come from above. If I can add my own interpretation on above, there's a Eranpin is above Malchus, that's one level. And above, he means Bina, as he will explain in a minute. The Hainu, as he says, Mepchinas Bina da Atzilus. From the Bina of Atzilus, and that's called above, because above the Malchut is the six emotions, and above the six, which are considered one level, and above the six emotions is Bina. The Dinam is Arin Mina, because from Bina, judgments are aroused. As we said earlier, remember we spoke in last class, you can listen to it, Shabbos Unplugged, class number 4. We discussed how in Bina's already, there's an element of yesh, of getting it, understanding it, and an intellectual ego. And from whenever there's yesh, there's somethingness, it can lead to a thicker yesh, a more denser sense of self, where in those elements is where the beginnings of judgments and elements start. Where there is total bittul and nullification, and there's nothing but the Or Ein Sof. Over there, there's just pure, infinite goodness and kindness. So even though vagam shemitzad atzmus oirabina, even though from the essence of the light of Bina, ein bashum b'chinas din klal, there's no judgment at all. K'rei habina nikra alma decheros, because Bina is called the world of liberty, the world of freedom. Like we find that the Jubilee year is the 50th year. And what happens on the Jubilee year? The sound of the shofar, and everybody is released. That means when we access the energies of 50, which is Bina, 50 gates of Bina, that's where there is no enslavement. So you see, it's freedom, to call freedom upon the land. Let freedom ring across the land. That's from Bina. We also know that when was that shofar blast sounded? It was sounded on Yom Kippur of the Jubilee year. And we know Yom Kippur is a day of Bina. The energy of Yom Kippur is Bina. And even the shofar that is blown, shofar also comes from a ram, and a ram is called a yovla, which means the shofar is also Bina. So you see that from Bina, there's only liberation and freedom and geula and redemption. However, notwithstanding that, there is the seeds of judgment over there. Yoiv, that's the supernal jubilee. Like it says in Zohar, the Adarabba. On the contrary, kol cheru, all liberation. He's quoting a phrase of Zohar. Kol cheru, all liberation. The chedva and all joy, nafkin mina, come from Bina. Like it also says, we say it in Psalms, we say it in our Hallel when we sing, we say Aim Habanim, the mother of the sons. Semecha is joyful. That means all joy comes from Bina, because Bina is called the mother. Ach bispashtus oira, that's true. Bina itself is a place of joy and liberation and freedom, but from her light, she shines such a kind of light, this type of light, when her light will shine into the emotions in a manner of hargasha, of feeling, v'yesh, and somethingness, that becomes a source for real harsh judgments. It starts off with very subtle judgments, But eventually it comes down to become very harsh judgments. And who are these harsh judgments? Malchus. Malchus is still strict, but not bad. But when Malchus hires the agents to go do the job, they can become very vicious. I'm not going to get political here, but we have, the president has trying to have a policy of closed borders. And closed borders, and then people that are not here legally should be sent home. Oh, good. And we can argue on the policy, yes or no, if you like the policy or not. But then there are the executors of it. And a lot of times these executors of it, like people are very angry at the ICE agents. And I am not in any way saying they're doing their job and job again. But a lot of times, if they get pleasure and enjoyment of like they get into their job and they can even start getting a little vicious about it, that's what we mean harsh judgments. It's when you're not seeing the greater picture, you're just beginning to enjoy inflicting pain. So again, I'm not saying this because I know I don't speak to ICE agents, and I think a lot of them are doing their jobs just to do what they need to do. And again, I don't want to get political in this, but I'm looking for a good example. And I think that's where there's an example, because when people are looking at the ICE agent on the street that are like going into a house and taking what seems to be, just plain hard laborers and arresting them, and it a lot of times breaks the heart. So, and there's a certain disregard. Don't come here. We'll push you away. And if you dare mess with us, so you get what I'm saying. So with Hashem also, what begins with a justified judgment, the agents who are the angels that are actually, they can become very mean-spirited angels. It's like you find that wardens and people who usually work in prisons are not the nicest people. Now, even though it's a job that you need to do, criminals need to be this, but by working over there, you become an oppressive person. And at a certain point, you don't mind seeing misery. You begin to get a pleasure in misery. It's a very, very, it's a very delicate job to be in. I mean, to be a kind warden, is special. To be a kind warden working in a prison, and to be kind, Joseph was there, and he was appointed to be. That's unique. That's special. But on the circumstances, a lot of times, this is what happens. When you are given a job to execute judgment, you start identifying with that judgment and finding pleasure in it, and sometimes putting those handcuffs on, and you don't have to put it on so tight. The person is being arrested. Some police officers, someone has to be arrested. So sometimes it's a hardened criminal. You're arresting El Chapo. I understand that you're going to put those or a terrorist, whatever. You're going to put those handcuffs on very tight. But if you're arresting someone who doesn't need such tight handcuffs, so why are you putting the handcuffs onto the deer and a lot? It's when you're enjoying the infliction of the pain. So that's called dinim kashim, harsh judgments. So spiritually also, when God sends judgment out, there are the couriers of those judgments, and they like tormenting people. Right? They enjoy it. And that's called the dinim kashim. They're called wicked angels. Or the bad angels. I'm saying wicked, but the bad angels. That are, they themselves bring accusations to try to kill people. They demanding death. Din Gomer, which is absolute judgment. So we have to trace it. Everything evolves. The main headquarters of judgments happens in Malchut, because God is running the world. If there's a king, if the government doesn't have any judgment and it's free for all and everybody gets away with doing everything, you're going to have utter chaos. So God has to set the rules, and Hashem has to set the rules, and he has to set the the thing over here, so that there should be some law and order in the world. However, once it gets into the departments, that particular department that is responsible to execute these judgments, as it goes farther and farther down, closer to the world, they become less divine and more mean-spirited. That's the point. But even in Malchut, where Malchus has judgment, it doesn't begin in Malchus. Where does it start? In the divine emotions that are higher than Malchus, there is already an attribute of judgment, which originates in the dinim that are in Bina, which is way up there. And Bina itself does not have that. Bina herself does not have that quality, but what can come from her. When the light from the midos of Malchus, which come out of the chesed and gevura, the kindness and the gevura, from where? From Malchus. The psolest, the dregs. Like Abraham, which from him comes Yishmael. Yeah. All right. And it is known. Okay. So we know now where the root. So we know now where the root of these. So we know now where the root of these judgments come from. And it is known, another rule, a very interesting rule in mysticism, that when you want to sweeten judgments, you have to go to the root where those judgments start and reconnect it to the source. Because in the source, there was never bad intentions. So when the final execution of judgment, which lost its attachment to its original source. So we said earlier, when the king is, what's the original? We said before, the king has a certain sense of justice and judgment. But when the king himself goes to the root of why he wants to execute judgment, he digs deep into himself and finds the beginning of the judgment. Where's the judgment coming from? And he realizes that he wants to have a country, he wants to have a very successful, and his intentions are benevolence. He wants people to live good lives. He wants there should be a lot of the people in his subjects to have the best life possible. I'm talking about a good ruler. It's what he's interested in. He realizes that if he lets people get away with all kinds of stuff, it's no one is going to have a good life. So he has to judge. If the king goes back to that place, he can be far more lenient in a lot of cases, because he realizes, okay, by the letter of the law, you broke the law, but are you really a bad person? If you go back to the source. See, once the king is already in judgment mood and he's already angry and he's got a wrath, you broke the law. So then there's especially, and that gives room to those who execute, they're completely into the judgment. But if you trace it all the way to the very beginning, and what's the intention over there? And then you'll look at what the person is suffering of. They say, did I ever intend to inflict such suffering and pain on someone? No. So maybe they need to have a second chance. Maybe they need to be given leniency. Maybe there needs to be maybe there's a way to give them to lighten it a little bit. That's the sweetening of the judgment. That's the meaning of, you have to go back to the very, very origins of where it started. And from there you can sweeten it. It is known that the judgments are sweetened only in their source. Not in another way. And if that's the case, when when poor people need sadly, poor people have find themselves in where? In the under the hot water pipe. Others are getting from the cool water, and they're getting scorched from a hot water pipe coming from God. I mean, it's from the judgments, from the fiery element. So when you want to sweeten their judgments, because in their source, from these souls, these poor people, is that they are in a situation where they are receiving from a harsher side of the king, from the attribute of kingship. So this sweetening, we need to elevate that. We need to elevate that in the root and in the source of this judgment, Dafka. We need to raise the poor man up to the beginning of those judgments, which are where in Bina. How do you do that? You invite them to a beautiful holiday meal. The holiday meal is plugging in the revelation of the divine energy that's causing us to have a festive meal on the holidays is an expansive light of Bina, which is full of joy and happiness, which from there starts the source of judgment. When you bring the people in your neighborhood that for whatever reason don't have the ability to have their meal, either because they don't have the food for their own meal, or because they don't have the company to make a meal, or whatever it is, they're lacking the support system to have themselves have their own family meal. You bring these people over into your holiday meal. You're elevating them into, what he's saying basically, you're removing the judgments from all these individuals. And perhaps that's also removing judgments from yourself as well. So it's an enormous opportunity every holiday to bring guests into your home. Always have guests into your house. You become a sweetener of judgments. You're removing judgments from the world. And these are the judgments that come from Bina. He says, what's the source? The source of all the judgments is the judgments that awaken from Bina. Now again, in Bina itself, there's no judgment, but when her light goes down into the midot, into the emotions, which is the first source for there to be an existence of judgments, which are drawn into the midot, the dibur and in speech, the inyanam taka, and how do you sweeten is, if you elevate this judgment, the yimtuk b'chasadim de'ema, and it becomes sweetened in the kind energies that there are in Bina. He calls it chasadim de'ema, in the kindness of the mother. Now, you got to bring these judgments up into the mother. The mother, which is Bina, has not only judgments, but also kindness. And when you bring it up into that place, that's where the kindness can sweeten it. The essence of the light of Bina. Which is the source, which is the source of all liberation, and all joy. And it's called the world of freedom. Which is the joy. What's joy? Joy is the kindness. Joy is an energy of expansivity. It's an energy of kindness that's taking place in Bina, which is where the holidays are. So when you take the poor people, not only do you bring them to your table, but during the meal, suddenly you sing a song, and then you get up and you dance with everybody, and everybody's submerged, rich and poor together, in this powerful energy of the holiday. So you're now lifting up all the judgments into the place where they become completely sweetened. And you have no idea what kind of an impact you're having on these people's lives. It's not only for the moment. This can change the fortune of these individuals, that they're from now till the next holiday, they're going to have much more parnasa. Things are going to be easier for them. And obviously for yourself as well, because we're all plugged into each other. Like it says, the mother of the children is joyful. And when do we say that? On Yom Tov. That's why the main mitzvah be Yom Tov, the main mitzvah on Yom Tov, simcha is joy, because joy happens in Bina. You should rejoice in your holiday. You should rejoice in front of God. In this revelation, from the kind energies of the light of Bina in Yom Tov, of the joy, that is where all the judgments become sweet. So if you're going to have guest Yom Tov, number one, make sure on the holiday that you are besimcha. If you're going to sit there like a grouch with your this, then what? Then you're bringing them into more judgments. You have to bring them into a very happy place, into a very festive environment. All the judgments become sweetened, he says. Even the harsh judgments, which evolve from the level of Bina, eventually, after many evolutions, it becomes harsh judgments down here below. Biyah is the three lower worlds, which is the worlds of creation. Malchus, from the Malchus element, that receives from the emotions, which these emotions are called the children of the mother, which come from Malchus, from Bina. And in Bina there is canal. And this is the secret of sweetening the judgments in their source. Getting to the very essence of Bina. In the emanation light of Bina, that's the source from where judgments come from. But the essence of Bina is beyond the judgments, or the very, very, very root source, where it's one with the kindness. And over there is where the sweetening takes place. And over there, there's no judgment at all. Only joy and happiness. And this is the root of the reason. That's why the Zohar says that on Yom Tov, it's a mitzvah to bring joy to the poor. Because the poor man, his root is from the judgments. And to sweeten those judgments is dafka, is primarily in Yom Tov. That's the time of our joy. This is the revelation of the mochin, of the Bina mochin, the Bina intelligence. Like we said earlier, that Yom Tov is the time of the mother of the children. And there's no sweetening of the judgments, dafka, only in the root. And like we said earlier, and therefore, if a person rejoices alone on Yom Tov, from the why are you happy on Yom Tov? Because your soul is being plugged into this very lofty level of Bina, which is shining on Yom Tov, and you're going to the party, but you're not bringing guests along. And you're not sweetening the judgments. So what's going on over here is, not only are you not helping out the poor, but you're evoking judgments on yourself, God forbid. Because you're going to a place that from there could come judgments. So think about it. It's not just, it's an opportunity to sweeten the judgments of other people. It's also you're connecting to an energy of intense light, which of course in the holiday is going to be very intense and beautiful for you. But since from this level could come judgment, and you're not tinkering to sweeten those judgments, because you're not bringing along a sweetener. You're not bringing along someone who represents those judgments. So God forbid those judgments can fester and can come down on the person himself. That's why we said that if you don't rejoice with the poor people on the holiday, let's see, to make them happy. On Sheisage, he has a big punishment, the Zohar says. And this person, it says, I will cast upon you the waste of your holidays. Why do we say waste? The waste represents these energies of Bina when they come down, 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 and they become dregs, the dregs of your holiday. These dregs are very harsh judgments. But on Shabbos, if you rejoice alone, you don't have such a punishment. Why? Because we explained earlier the Shabbos Shabbos that the root of Shabbos is from the Mochen of Chachma. Shalamayla, that's beyond grasping. So there's no yesh, there's something there because you can't even grasp it. It's just like there's a light that's shining from above. There's no self, there's no I, and when there's no I, there are no judgments. It's still higher than the grasp. In any kind of somethingness. And there isn't any root at all for any deriving of energy to the judgments. Canal Barichos, like we said earlier. Remember, it's the same reason we said that the nations don't have a relationship with Shabbos. Over there you can't say that it's a mitzvah to bring joy to the poor. Since the whole idea of bringing joy to the poor, is to sweeten the harsh judgments, like we said earlier. And over here there's no connection to harsh judgments. By Shabbos, there isn't any leakage going to the judgments at all. And as we say in the special passage of the Zohar that is recited in many communities before Shabbos, in the famous piece called Kegavna, what do we say over there? Kol dinin misabrimina. All judges are removed from the Malchut on Shabbos, because Malchut, which is the Shekhinah, which is the creation, is receiving from Chachma. And in Chachma, there is nothing to create constriction. You see it? Where we're holding? I saw you. It's on the second column. I'm looking. See, you're looking at the wrong column. On page Reish Tzadik Vav. You see Reish Tzadik Vav? You have it? Maybe it's the wrong. Maybe it's the first copy. Is that one? Let me see your page. No. I'm looking at you. I'm saying it doesn't look like you're following in the right place. I get. Take that because there might be a second set. This could be the first week. Let me see that. No, this is the same copy. So we thought we got last week's. We got 2 weeks. We got the first set. Aye. Yeah, metamanal, and like the reason we said earlier, the bechachma lo yashvira klal. In chachma there was no shattering the vessels at all. Like we learned earlier that there's death, but it doesn't happen in chachma. In order for there to be judgments, there has to be the beginning of mitziut. The judgments can only happen where there is already somethingness and where that something can become constricted. But in the place of where we're completely open to the pure flow of the Ein Sof, of the infinite, over there, there's no constriction, there's no tzimtzum, there's no contraction, it's just pure goodness of the Ein Sof. So there's no room for anything to come from there that is harsh. So then why do you need to sweeten? There's nothing to be sweetened. Because even the judgments of Malchut, which are called tzedek, doesn't even rule on Shabbos. Shabbos, the Shekhinah is completely, she's saturated with the light of Chachma, and therefore her her fires of judgment are completely extinguished. That's why it says Gehenna is not open on Shabbos. Hell is not working on Shabbos. Why? Because suddenly the king is submerged in this infinite pleasure, in this infinite delight, and the king, and so there's no judgments even in the king. Everything is just pure joy. And for this reason that we don't need sweetening of the judgments on Shabbos. That's why the main mitzvah of Shabbos is not even joy. The main mitzvah of Shabbos, because joy also sweetens judgments. The main mitzvah of Shabbos is pleasure, which is a much deeper experience than joy. Joy is more an outward projection, and pleasure is more of an inwardness. Not the joy, that Kodesh, which is Shabbos, stands for itself. Joy is necessary to sweeten judgments. By the way, the greatest thing you can do when you're feeling judgments in your own life, if you're feeling certain constrictions, let's say you don't have money to pay the bills, or suddenly, you're slapped with something that hits you and you're feeling like you're being hit by various different things, that you're feeling like, oi gewalt, you're feeling stuck. The biggest thing you can do at that moment is hit the music really strong, put on your favorite rocking song and go dance. And dance, even it's hard, and dance and jump and suddenly think about the thing that makes you happy the most. And that sweetening of judgments. You will see that things will turn around in no time. Suddenly good things will happen. These things that were joy literally sweeps away it's hard because we're caught in the moment and we fall into the constriction. But joy sweetens judgments. Always the case. Always the case. It's so counterintuitive, because the nature is when you get bad news to get sad about it. But if you can be in control of your emotions and stop for a moment, take a deep breath and say, God, I know you're here. And because you're here, there might be a partition, something concealing, but I know you're here. I am so excited you're here. I'm going to dance in your honor. And just dance. Close the door that no one should see you, but but dance. Or even better, find someone to dance with you. There's no question. Joy removes judgments. Joy is needed to sweeten the judgments. Why? Because a judgment is a constriction. What is joy? Joy is an expansion. It's the opposite of constriction. Joy is revelation. When you're joyous, you want to talk to everybody. When you're feeling constricted, you're feeling isolated, to yourself. Right? So when you fight back the constriction, it's like when you get a cramped muscle. You sleep at night. So what do you try to do? I don't want to evoke bad memories, but thank God I didn't get it in a very long time. But if you do, you try to stretch your foot like the opposite, you push against the muscle that's cramping. So that's the same thing spiritually. When you're feeling a cramping of something, a spiritual cramping, you have to push back the total opposite to expand that energy, and that's through joy. And then you break the cramping. That's just what happens. You drink a lot of water, and you break the cramping by Kiyadua. And if you need to, in order to add to the joy, if the music doesn't help, learn your favorite Torah and say, Pekudei Hashem Yesharim Mesamchei Lev. The mitzvahs are God are straight. They bring joy to the heart. And learn Torah with joy. You'll call me up and you'll tell me. And I want everybody listening to this class, give me your messages. Try it this week. If you have any harsh moment, push back with joy and happiness. As is for every human being, not just for Jewish people, for anybody. Push back with joy and happiness, even if it's not easy. Even after we say fake it until you make it. But fake it. Fake the joy. But you will see that whatever it is that's that's sitting and pressing upon you will get better. You'll see immediately improvements. That's the rule. And this is why it says in the verse, the Kamar Peres Chagechem. It says, God says, I will throw upon you the peres, the dregs or the waste of your. It's almost like God saying, I will throw feces on you of your holidays. What does that mean? But he doesn't say the feces of your Shabbos, the dregs of your Shabbos, only of your holidays. Why? The Piddish Peres, what does it mean, Peres? Hu al derech marshal pchenes psoles. Hayotzem in akravayim. It's like the feces or the that come out of a person's stomach. So kach yesh lamayla pchenes psoles. So just like there is in a human being, so too in the supernal flow of energy that's coming through the system, the harsh judgments are like the dregs coming from holiness, but the last dreg, and that's why people say when things are going not good for them, they use not such a nice word, but that's really what it is. They're getting that stuff upon them. I'll let you use your imagination when I'm saying. But people say that, I'm going through whatever. This is like really whatever. So why do people use that? Because that's true. There is peres. You're being... I don't want to say impure things, but that's the idea. You're being... And God says, if on the holiday you don't invite poor people, you're allowing these judgments to then evolve from the Bina experience that you're experiencing, from the holiday itself, eventually down the road, in 6 months from now, or in 3 months, God forbid, whatever it is, there will be an evolution of this energy, which will become eventually judgments, and it will turn into harsh judgments, and it will be so harsh that it will turn into real whatever. And God says, I will throw that upon you, God forbid. Eventually, it all comes from Bina, which is the pot that we're stirring on the holidays, which is a wonderful pot. It's a pot of all the blessings. But just like from Abraham, who was a wonderful man of kindness, could eventually come out Yishmael, and from Isaac, who was a wonderful God-fearing man, can eventually come out from him Esau. So from our great energies that we are stoking up on the holidays, from it can evolve judgments. It's only on the Chagim, which are the holidays, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, and the like. The Fisha Shoira az b'chinas Bina, because that's when Bina is dwelling. And that's the reason why the holidays are not called Kodesh like Shabbos, because Kodesh is Chachma, which is holiness. They're called Mikra'e Kodesh, a calling of holiness. Because it's Bina that receives the light of Chachma in it, but Bina is already a much lesser level than Chachma. If you do not sweeten the judgments that come from it, it's called the peres, the waste of your holidays. Your holidays. Shabbos that doesn't even have a root and a source for the yanika, for the arriving of these judgments canal. We can't say the waste of your Shabbos. However, even though it's not such a mitzvah to bring joy to the poor on Shabbos, and if you don't give to the poor, the person is not given such a big punishment. It still is a mitzvah to invite people over even on Shabbos. And if the person does not have guests over and invite, The person gets a little punishment. So it's better always to have a guest at your Shabbos meal, as much as it's possible. I'm not saying the week of before Pesach, but all the other times. Like it is explained from this mimer. Like it says on in this mimer, it says on Shabbos they don't give a punishment like the other times, but it doesn't say one is totally exonerated. But why? If Shabbos doesn't have any judgments at all, why is it important? Because even though Shabbos is primarily an illumination of Chachma, which is called Father, which is above judgment, but on Shabbos turns on all the lights. So once Chachma turns on, it turns on the lights of Bina as well. And from the Bina element, there could be some judgments coming in on Shabbos. It is known, the Chachma of Bina, because Chachma and Bina are called Nikretrein Reyen. They're called two friends, the Loim Isparshin, that never separate. So when there is an added dosage of energy in Chachma, it stimulates Bina as well. And from the excessive energy of Bina that's radiating on Shabbos, there could be a leakage as well. And the Netzach Hod Yesod, the lower powers of Chachma, are always then clothed in Bina. And therefore, there is some stimulation over here as well. But on Shabbos, Iker HaGiloi, the primary revelation, from the lights of Chachma, Shenikra Kodesh, that is called holy, like we said earlier. Therefore, because there is some chelek, there's some portion of the light of Bina that is attached to Chachma, that is unified with Chachma. Kam b'Shabbos, so also in Shabbos, you need to bring joy to the poor. To sweeten the judgments that could come from Bina Kniskel. It's not such a mitzvah like on Yom Tov, because on Yom Tov, the primary revelation and the intensity is all from Mother, from Bina. The main revelation on Yom Tov, is from the Mochen of the Mother, which is Bina, and therefore there's much more room for negativity to come from Yom Tov, not from Shabbos. Could be this is the reason, by the way, that there is a custom by many people, it's brought in halacha, to fast 3 fasts after every Yom Tov. It's called Tainas Bahab. They do a Monday, Thursday, Monday after Pesach, and a Monday, Thursday, Monday after Sukkot. I don't know if they do it on Shavuos, but after those 2 big holidays. And the simple reason is because it's festivities and people, you enjoy a lot, and people are partying a lot, and could be people sinned a little bit in those. So to do it just in case you do tshuva, there is a Beis Hey Beis, a Monday, Thursday, Monday fast. It could be that it's related to this, that it's related to just in case here you're seeing that the holiday itself can be the source for problems down the line. So in order to sweeten it, even after Yom Tov, they fast in order to, if there's anything there that went haywire, any energies that were kind of misdirected, that there shouldn't be any, because people don't realize it. Holy energies need to be protected, because anything that has a lot of intensity can always misfire. If you have a loaded gun in your house, God forbid, it can chas v'shalom. So something that's very powerful needs to be, Yom Tov is very powerful. So you need to have caution. You need to have caution that the energies of the Yom Tov should not misleak. Like we learned in last class, that when a person prays very, very well, and they evoke and they turn on their energies in their soul, they have to be extra careful how they're going to use that energy that day. Because it's very likely that precisely because you prayed really well and you've expanded your emotions, that you might find yourself being more prone to getting angry that day, because you're more alive. So the excessive energy can leak into the wrong thing. Or if you're not protecting it, you might fall into a certain lust that you would not have felt. They say, I mentioned the story many times, that there was a great drunkard who used to hang out around the Baal Shem Tov shul all the time. The guy was massively drunk, and he would always, when the Baal Shem Tov would pray, he would always hang around outside the the window from where the Baal Shem Tov was davening, and I think that's where he went. He would lay there and he would drink his vodka. And they once asked him, and he always asked, when is the Baal Shem Tov praying? And he would go there. And he said he doesn't know, but when the Baal Shem Tov prays, he feels like such a powerful like desire to guzzle, which he doesn't feel any other place. Anywhere he goes in town, he never feels that. And here so what's going on? The Baal Shem Tov was drawing down such powerful, and this guy was plugging into the Wi-Fi. It's like you have a Wi-Fi and someone else is hacking it and getting into your server and so that's kind of the idea over here. You have to be very careful. It's the same idea. Yep. But Shabbos is not a hackable energy. It doesn't land. The klippas can't get any grab on it. And that's why it concludes, the Zohar includes these words, your Rosh Chodesh, and your holidays. Sana nafshi, God says, I hate them. God forbid if they're done wrong. Begin kaksiv, and that's why it says, but regarding Shabbos, beini ubein bnei Yisrael, between me and Israel. Piddush. Since it says your holidays, Mashman implies Shem Dafka Shel Yisrael. These are from Israel. Moadechem means you make the holiday. And that's true. Because holidays, we know, are dependent on the Hebrew calendar. And the Hebrew calendar is set by the high court, by the Beis Din. They have to have witnesses, saw the moon, and based on that, they set the calendar. So we're kind of part of setting the holidays. That's because holidays are in Bina. As we said, Bina is already the source for our existence. Because remember, what's the source for creation? Where does creation really begin in the divine? In Bina. Bina is called Yesh. Chachma is utterly God's domain. Chachma is still a revelation of Ein Sof. It's not. There's no us there yet. If we're there, the only way we can be there is by not being. We have to be completely in a state of suspension to exist in Chachma. If you want to enter the zone of Chachma, you can't be. You have to be not. In Bina, there is already the beginning of somethingness. So Bina, that's why the holidays, which are the energies of Bina, we can tinker with it. We can decide the holidays. Shabbos, we don't decide. Shabbos is holy by God. Because Shabbos is Chachma. We have no control on Chachma. Chachma is beyond. And as we know that Israel is the one that sanctified the times. It says, these are the times of God, that you should call them. Atem dafka, you're the ones who call them into holiness. Aval Shabbos, but Shabbos, but on Shabbos, it's being sanctified by God. Like it says by Shabbos openly, and God sanctified it. That means it's utterly divine. It's utterly coming from Hashem. The Alpha became, and nevertheless, so even though Shabbos is, so we can't create the Shabbos, but God shares it with us. He shines that light into our souls. He invites us into the world of Chachma. It's a sign. We have a half of Shabbos. It's me and you. It's a very interesting term over here. We own half of it. But all of this is because Shabbos, the revelation is from the Mochen of Chachma. And what's our relationship to that? Because God says to Israel, you are my firstborn child. And a child comes from the Chachma of the Father. But the holidays of God, that's the expansion, the energy of the holiday is from the Mochen of Mother, of Bina. Now, the Eloi Chadel Miskin, and if you don't bring in the poor people and bring them joy, and you didn't sweeten the judgments, your holidays, son and nafshi, I hate. But on Shabbos, he can't even say yours because we don't take part in creating it, son and nafshi, because it's not ours. The main Shabbos is coming from God. And the judgments can't even get there at all. Like we said earlier, it is enough to those who understand. And because all of the elements of faith, remember we said, what does that mean? Keser, Chachma, and Bina, the 3 meals of Shabbos. Going back to what we learned last week. Friday night is Chachma, because the lights of Malchus go up to Chachma, and from there, the lights of Keser are shining into Chachma. Shabbos morning is utterly Keter. We go all the way into the crown, into Atika Kadisha. Shabbos Mincha time, which is the third meal, the lights of Keter are shining into the Zeir Anpin through Bina. So it's therefore Kol Me'menusa Ishtakach b'Shabbos. The entire Keser Chachma Bina are all present on Shabbos. Yahavan lebeinash nishmasa achra. A person is given a higher neshama. As we know, Shabbos we're given a neshama yasera, an extra soul. Nishmasa ilah, an elevated soul. Nishmasa dechol shlima ba, a soul that all perfection is in it. That's what it says in Zohar, in continuation to this Zohar. So the Alter Rebbe says this particular portion that he just mentioned about the higher soul that we get, I'm not going to explain here, because I explained it already in the Maimer Kegavna. Earlier in Kegavna, where it speaks about that everybody gets a neshama yasera, he explained what the relationship of Shabbos to this higher neshama. This is explained elsewhere. Inyan neshama yasera, what does it mean, the extra neshama? I think he explained it in the Siddur on the commentary on Nishmas, which we say on Shabbos, which says the soul of every being sings to God. Nishmasa the parcha machaya lamim. What the soul of the Ayin Sham Barichos. This is something that I guess we're going to have to learn one day. The Dailamev. We'll begin kach, and because of this is going to be the last piece we learn of it today. Ikre Shabbos. Okay, I'm going to admit that I have no idea what he's going to be saying in the next piece because I didn't even look at it. Till here, I got to prepare, not this week, because this week was Purim, was a little bit of a. So I was learning this week what we didn't learn last week, what I was thinking to learn last week, we didn't learn last week. Further already, I'm in uncharted territory, and I see it's very Kabbalistic. So I'm going to have to take some time working on it. So we're going to learn it Be'ezus Hashem in next week. Yeah, and next week we'll finish class number 6. We'll finish this discourse, and then we still have to conclude the Zohar, learn an entire piece on the third meal, which is going to be the next. So next class can be 6. I would imagine that the last class can take another 2 classes. It's probably going to be 8 classes on Shabbos meals. Okay. Meanwhile, we'll leave it over here. A little shorter of a class. Yeah, really short. Only an hour and 13 minutes. But Purim really knocked me out. So just we learned a very important lesson today is whenever there's judgments, joy. And Yom Tov, guests. So a lot of good stuff over here. All right, everyone, be well. Oh, don't forget that last week I mentioned in last class that because Shabbos is a time when the klippas and the dinim don't have any achiza, don't have any judgment, and the powers of evil don't have any access to it. So I mentioned last week on Thursday night class, I gave a blessing that the attack on Iran should start on Shabbos. You can listen to class number 4, and my blessing came true, right? There you go. Those who are looking to blame the whole war of Iran on whatever, I'm the guy to blame. I'm moving the cosmos. I'm directing. Yes. They're blaming. I hear it on the thing. They're blaming Chabad. There's a whole kind, right? Whatever. Some big, loud, noisy idiots are blaming Chabad for the whole war on Iran. So I'm saying they shouldn't blame Chabad. They should blame Wolf. Okay. Take care, everyone.